Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of Congregational Humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome. Well, there are new phrases and words in the dictionary this year. One of them is rage farming. Rage farming. Now, rage farming is the tactic of intentionally provoking political opponents, typically posting inflammatory content on social media in order to elicit angry responses and thus high engagement or widespread exposure for the original poster. Rage farming. And here's a good example in case you need one, which if I had some time, I would do maybe a bumper sticker campaign against. Alert! Joe Biden called for Christians to be added to the terror watch list. Yes, former Vice President Joe Biden, who will never be elected president, by the way, has a message for American Christians. If you don't defect from your faith and embrace leftism, then you're going to be added to the government's terror watch list. Yes, rage farming. So I think I'm going to come up with a bumper sticker campaign right now. Farm cabbage, not rage. You can all do the music for that campaign, right? It might catch on, who knows? But yes, as Buckley said, our theme for the month of March is vulnerability. Last Sunday, I was chatting at the front door here when I asked someone, "How you doing?" And I got a fairly honest answer, I think. "I just haven't felt right," she said, "since, I don't know, COVID, I guess." Which I think is how a lot of people are still feeling. There is a lot of vulnerability out there. I tried to make a list. I mean, there's the physical vulnerability due to COVID and for ourselves and our loved ones. There's emotional vulnerability due to isolation that occurred, financial vulnerability due to job loss and now inflation, the vulnerability of our democracy itself on January 6th, intellectual vulnerability due to the culture wars. I mean, how much rage farming can you really, stand out there? And the vulnerability of the earth itself and all of its beings. We have seen nothing if we haven't seen the effects of climate change in the last few years. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some vulnerabilities out there, but that's what I came up with pretty quickly. And it's a lot, isn't it? We're all feeling vulnerable. All of us have felt some of those things in some way, shape, or form, or we've known people who have. What, if anything, have we learned from all of that is my question for us today. What have we learned from this experience? Because, just like Top 40 radio, the hits just keep on coming, right? They just keep on coming. Well, the American physicist and philosopher Thomas Kuhn created the phrase paradigm shift. We've all heard that a few times at this point. A paradigm shift describes a situation in which basic assumptions and practices have changed. How we do something is no longer the right way to do it for some reason, a paradigm shift. For example, social media has been a paradigm shift in the way that we communicate. And rage farming, so-called, is one of the effects of that change, that paradigm shift in personal communication. And how we do Sunday assembly here in both live and online formats is a paradigm shift. It's a little disturbing for some of us that, we now have about as many people online as here, and it just doesn't feel as exciting to have people watching back and forth, but we're so glad that people are able to watch us from anywhere in the world now. So COVID did that paradigm shift, and we're still trying to figure out how to do that. And conferences, seminars, education, restaurants, everybody is facing some sort of paradigm shift now. And part of navigating a major paradigm shift is realizing what has changed irrevocably, what will never come back the way it was, because that's what we need to get over and cope with the new thing, seeing and realizing what is gone and what the possibilities are, because it's not all about loss, it's also about continuing. Paradigm shifts often include a sense of losing control. How do we do congregational life in this new paradigm? It's a question that all congregations of all types are asking. How do we do education in this new paradigm? How do we do committee meetings and book groups and conferences in the new paradigms? What paradigm shifts do our minds convince us we aren't in control? Oh my gosh, I can't deal with that one, And then how do we deal with it? Because the paradigm has shifted. It's not going to shift back. We have to feel somehow enough hope and obligation, maybe even, to keep going until we figure out how to do these paradigm shifts. Because, actually we all want to feel like we're in control, but we're not really in control anyway. So it's actually merely revealing the illusion of control, but it still doesn't make it feel any better. Now, a metaphor that I like to use when I talk about religion is decoder rings. I'd like to think about, what does religion do? Actually, it helps our thinking. It helps us find ways to deal with some kind of reality and some kind of paradigm. And so philosophies and religions, I think, are kind of like a decoder ring. Now, at one time, toy decoder rings were very popular as surprises in things like breakfast cereals and Cracker Jacks. Obviously, the manufacturer's motivation was to get kids to beg their parents to buy that particular brand so they and all of their friends could have the same decoder ring. Now, the promise of a way cool decoder ring was the ability to encode and decode secret messages. And the ultimate goal was to exclaim, as the kid does in this photo, "It all makes sense now!" Right? Well, that's why religions are like decoder rings. It all makes sense now, right? They promise to unlock secret knowledge about great mysteries, how things are, the cosmology of the universe. How does all of that work? Religion will explain that. Which things matter most? Ethics, right? That's how religions work. This is what matters, that doesn't matter. And so we get our decoder ring and we figure these things out. What is obvious with decoder rings is that there is one code. Right. There has to be one code in the encoding by someone with the ring, and then the message has to be decoded by someone else with the same ring, right? That's why you get 2 sales in your cereal, right? What isn't immediately clear is that someone with a Cracker Jacks decoder ring will not be able to communicate with someone who has a Rice Krispies decoder ring. That's where the problems come in. And I argue that the same is true in religions and in denominations for that matter. A Roman Catholic with a Roman Catholic decoder ring will not be able to communicate efficiently with someone who has a Unitarian Universalist decoder ring. The intentions are the same, but the information concerning the questions of how things are and which things matter are very likely to disagree with each other. And that's a problem. For information to be coherently communicated, the decoder ring that we use to encode the message has to be the same as the decoder ring that we use to decode the message. Now, sure, the concept of the decoder ring crosses these boundaries, and they all work in a similar fashion, after all, right? This decoder ring, works like that one, but they aren't the same. They merely look like they are kind of the same. They do work in a similar fashion. The intentions and the outcomes of all religions are similar. What does the cosmos look like? How does it work? And what matters most in the world? The ideas, the questions are similar to each other. However, the understanding of how things are and which things matter are not always similar. The paradigms are different. The paradigms of Unitarian Universalism and humanism insist that our attitudes and our intentions should comport with a commonly agreed upon objective reality. It's one of the things we believe in, an objective reality. We believe in the free market of ideas. We believe in experiment and in investigation. We agree that the changing of social and scientific paradigms requires us to reevaluate past paradigms and adapt or change our paradigms. We generally think that there are a whole lot of little t truths and not that many big T truths. That tends to be how we think. In my life, I went off to college thinking I was going to discover big T truth. Well, it's been a few years since, and I have to admit that I've found a lot of little T truths, but not all that many big T truths. Truth is mostly some good guesses that work, mostly based in the cultures where those truths reside. Cultures invent their own truths, and those truths work within those cultures. But often they don't work in other cultures. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead wrote, "To know the truth partially is to distort the universe." To know the truth partially is to distort the universe. But Alfred North Whitehead was alive in the late 19th and early 20th centuries when many assumed that we human beings are capable of discovering capital T truth, absolute truth. Most of us don't think that anymore. So we accept that our truths concerning the cosmos will always be partial and therefore distorted. It's a paradigm shift, and it's a little hard to get accustomed to at times. Based on this fact of our liberal religious tradition, we are progressives, because historically we have searched for new paradigms. We tend to say hurting GLBTQ people at train stations is wrong. Yes, that's the paradigm. We live there. How can we fix that one? What is the new paradigm? And that's why we are progressive, is because we search for those new ways of doing things. Being progressive doesn't mean that we believe in progress as some kind of inevitability. That was a 19th century and early 20th century idea too, that humanity would always improve and everything would always get better. Well, they were wrong about that. Things are far from that reality. Progress in human social incarnations is really difficult. It's really slow, and sometimes it is extremely painful. However, in our rapidly changing planetary and social lives, believing that progress can be made is, I think, an advantage for us. We believe in change, we believe things can change, and we believe things can change in a positive direction. Take, for example, a few words from the University of Chicago professor of ethics, Martha Nussbaum. Many of you know she's one of my favorite philosophers, living philosophers. She says this: "New issues arise constantly. The world needs an ethical revolution, a consciousness-raising movement of truly international proportions. But this revolution is impeded by the navel gazing that is typically involved in asking, what is it to be human, right? Let's rekindle and extend our sense of wonder by asking instead, what is it to be a whale? Then let's go observe whales as best we can and read the thrilling research of scientists." End quote. Now, Dr. Nussbaum makes an excellent point here. I think perhaps we can re-see the human condition I mean, we've been bouncing our heads against that wall for a while. What does it mean to be human, right? We can re-see the human condition by looking at other sentient beings that aren't human. What does it mean to be a whale? And we can somehow get our minds out of our own egos. We can awaken to our humanity, and maybe we can even stop prioritizing the human in the world and place the human animal into that web of planetary existence. And that's mind expanding, isn't it? What Dr. Nussbaum is describing is a religious experience, I would argue. Religion is about entering into a mental and heart space in which we open ourselves to experience of the other, right? Whether that other is another human being, loving our neighbor and our enemy and those sorts of things, or a whale. Well, you know, the idea is that nothing, that other, because nothing is actually other, right? That other is just like me, part of the wider web of existence, and therefore not exotic, not foreign, but rather a fellow sentient being in our web of existence. Love thy neighbor then can mean loving whales as well. An ethical, religious, or philosophical stance is taking responsibility for the vulnerability of all things by joining with other people and other sentient beings and the planet itself as co-creators of a positive future. That's a new paradigm for us, and it's about time we get to work on it before we lose our planet itself. Our liberal religious traditions are about encouraging the flourishing of all sentience, I would argue. And that's the place that we need to go. Yes, we call ourselves humanists, but as I often say, actually we are everythingists, aren't we? Dr. Michael Hogue is a professor of philosophy, ethics, and philosophy in the religion of philosophy at Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago. He has spoken here. I hope to get him back here one of these days. He has this to say: genuinely internalizing the meaning of vulnerability for us and the earth can discipline us to align our actions and thoughts more rigorously with our intentions. In aspiring to this alignment, we discover that we are not alone and we need one another. We cannot live intentionally apart from others. In recognizing this need for others, we discern the importance of trust, showing up, being there, and holding ourselves accountable. Now, I'm going to break that down a little bit. When we understand, genuinely feel in our bodies that our nation, the living beings on our planet, and the planet itself are vulnerable, we will take action. When we realize the danger we're in, we will take action. We will take responsibility to the best of our abilities. As we earnestly do that work, we will discover, Dr. Hogue says, we will discover others fighting the good fight too. And not only that, but we will discover the need for each other in this struggle called life. Dr. Hogue puts it simply, quote, we cannot live intentionally apart from others, end quote. That realization awakens us to trust and to personal accountability, he says. It begins in vulnerability and builds to accountability. And that, I think, is what congregations do well. We wake up, we show up, we embrace our need for each other, and we embrace our accountability to each other. We are better in every way when we are together. After all, we've been through a lot in these recent years. Nearly everyone is a bit weary and also wary. That feeling of vulnerability, however, is a positive sign, I think. It means that we realize that none of us are alone in some remote island or citadel. It means that we have realized that we ourselves, our loved ones, our society, living things, and the planet itself are all interconnected. They're actually kind of small. And it is a web of vulnerability and mutuality. Vulnerability is a sign of life. Change is a sign that we are still alive. Now, to realize that we all have the same really swell and nifty decoder ring is also a good thing to realize. So, let's get those on our fingers. Let's communicate and let's stay open to each other despite it all. Thanks for listening. You can find much more about humanism and what's happening at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis by visiting our website at firstunitarian.org.